Hi, welcome to Metaphysic Television. Today we're going to talk about a show coming up on Spanish Discovery Channel called Have You Ever Wondered? It's a new series that they're starting, and they're going to be covering a lot of different questions. And we want to talk today about one of the questions that they're coming up with real soon. And that's why we have Zarin here, who's author of the book Atlantis, A Karmic Memory of the Rise and Fall. Because the question that they're bringing up for this television show is, what happened to Atlantis? Why did it fall? So Zarin, based upon now Atlantis, a karmic memory, meaning that these are memories you have of a previous life and also different karmic input that you have, kind of channel information. Based on that, what do you have to tell us about Atlantis and why it fell?
Well, you know, this is probably the most interesting myth in history. Everybody has been trying to answer the question of Atlantis ever since it was discovered that Plato had written about it in his Timaeus and Critias dialogues. And this was done around 360 BCE. So a lot of people have tried to figure out, how does a continent, island continent, sink into the sea in 24 hours? What would cause such a thing? And this, in my books, which I'm writing on the subject, of which there will be 3 books about Atlantis and a 4th post book, which will talk about some of the things that were discovered or written by people on Atlantis. It was a 3,000-year history that took it to the point in which it fell. And the entire technology of Atlantis was built on a crystal, a rare, unique crystal that only existed in 2 places on this planet. One was in Atlantis and the other was on another island continent on the other side of the world, but they didn't have as much of it as they did in Atlantis, because the reason why it was created primarily because of where Atlantis was. And this crystal had the ability to focus just like lasers are focusing energy through crystals, by the way. Had the ability to focus mental energy. And the people of Atlantis, the original discoverers of this, developed a discipline for using this technology, this mental focusing, to lift things and to build things and to do wonderful things. Actually, over the thousands of years in which they used this crystal, things started to happen to their brain. Their heads started to elongate. They got a little higher in the forehead. That's why you see all these people from the ancient world that wanted to copy it, because the Atlanteans had these extended craniums, and it was due to the crystal, the use of it. But with all things that mankind has, there's always someone who has to misuse it. And they did. Evolution at first was very benevolent, very, very much to the benefit of the people of Atlantis. And up until a certain period of time in Atlantean history, they actually had what we would refer to as the Garden of Eden, the original place where everybody would like to go back to. Everybody was basically well fed, they were healthy, they were essentially content, and they really didn't have a lot of problems. The weather was absolutely perfect. It was very much like Hawaii is now. And so when in using this crystal, they didn't truly understand what it was doing, because it didn't just focus mental energy. It did something with spiritual energy. And all forms of energy have a negative and positive aspect to them. Even now, science is discovering what they call dark energy, and they do not know what that is. They don't know
energy, dark matter.
None of that. And so they now know that in the universe there's always a polarity to everything. There's always an opposite to it. Well, just with the use of this crystal, which I call the Attal stone, because that's why it was named Atlantis. It was named after the Attal stone. Atalantis was what it was actually called. And Plato knew about it. He just didn't know how to describe it because none of them existed. So over the centuries that they used this crystal, something happened to the original paradise in Atlantis. A foreign group of people came in, discovered Atlantis, and infected it with their ideas, and then there was a great upheaval, which you have to go to my books to see the details, but there was basically a civil war. And the people who used the crystal divided up into 2 camps, and one camp supported the newcomers and their ideas, and the other camp supported the old ideas. Sort of what's going on between the Republicans and the Democrats right now. But over the centuries, this crystal began to have a feedback from this universe into where it came, where the energy was coming from, which I like to call the all. And to describe it is impossible. I don't even think it's mathematically possible, but I do know that it's there, and anything can come from it, but you can also send things back to it. And it also has polarity, which means there's negative and positive aspects to it. But this particular crystal was, the matrix was to bring good positive energy. It worked off of that. And there was another species near Atlantis that also had access to the power of this crystal, although they didn't quite use it the way humans did. Theirs was more spiritual. So over the centuries, and we're talking about basically 2,500 years of the use of this crystal. They finally became so evil, human sacrifice, vampirism, greed, everything that you could possibly imagine that humanity can degenerate into in terms of dark or evil.
They say that power corrupts, and absolute
Exactly.
power corrupts absolutely. And they had, from the sounds of it, they had enough power to rule the world and
They
to
did rule
to
the
do
world.
anything they wanted to.
They did rule the world, and they learned how to use this crystal to make a kind of like a nuclear weapon out of it. It wasn't quite the same way we use nuclear weapons, but they did learn how to make a bomb out of it, which was catastrophic. The energy was phenomenal. They actually destroyed an entire civilization with this weapon, and this is what I call really dark evil.
Yeah.
I don't like to use the word evil because I think evil has too much of those established religious connotations. But let's just say it was destructive energy, what would break things down. And it might be the dark energy that we now know is out there, and that the universe is not, we don't understand how it
Not quite
works.
in balance.
So they accumulated this, and what happened is the energy would go back into the all, and it would form the all didn't like it. Where it was going, it didn't like it, so it would form a bubble inside the all, which has no space-time. But it had a space-time bubble of its own, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Finally, it couldn't take it anymore. It came back out into our universe. And all the crystals that existed on Earth at that time broke down into a monoatomic level. And if you knew anything about the structure of the continent of Atlantis, there were huge crystal shafts, and we've seen caves and programs on TV where they show these gigantic crystals. These crystals were a mile wide. They were so big. And they sank deep into the ocean and deep into the ground, and that supported the continent of Atlantis. And in a 24-hour period, which was really actually quicker than that, Plato was only estimating how quickly it sank. And it sank in one day and one night is what he said. I believe it sank in a couple of hours, because I think the support columns, which is exactly what happened in the World Trade Center. Remember the tower, the steel columns melted and the building sank. That's exactly what happened to Atlantis. It fell because they forgot one of the basic tenets of the universe, that evil destroys, negativity destroys, and positivity constructs and builds. Positivity is what gives us our dreams. Evil is what gives us our nightmares. So Atlantis fell because it lost track of its humanity. It lost track of its original reason for being. It even lost track of the purpose of this crystal. And because they lost track, they didn't understand what was happening to them.
You know, this whole concept of this type of crystal is so foreign to people now that when we talk to people about it, a lot of them have trouble with it, because there's, in just about every mythology having to do with Atlantis, there's things about crystals.
Exactly.
But all the people who talk about it use their own perceptions of and their own knowledge of what crystals are like, and based upon that, they feel that, well, the crystal had to act this way. There are so many things outside of what we know about crystals, what we know about so many parts of the planet anyway, that their perception doesn't stretch far enough to allow something to be so different that it was so unique upon the planet.
And it was created under extremely unique circumstances. It's probably very rare in the universe. It is in other areas of the universe. Crystals do basically 5 things. They amplify, they focus, they sense, they vibrate to another vibration. They'll actually echo a vibration. And these aspects we see manifested in our own technology right now. When you're looking at your high definition TV being broadcast by a satellite, or it's being done with a laser, and it's being done with laser beam, those are energies that have been transmitted into a crystal and made into what they call a coherent beam. Most of the light is not coherent. It travels in every direction, but they make it coherent. The Attel crystal made mental energy coherent, which means you could focus mental energy on, and it took years and years and years to discipline yourself to be able to move a heavy object to another. It took 20 years just to raise the level of color that your crystal would turn to. So by the time you got into your 90s, you were lucky if you made it to your 90s, but if you did, you could be a white atom, which means you could literally move the sun. That's how much power you would be able to focus. And this power didn't just come from the crystal, it came from the all, the mind, where the mind is.
Well, even now, if they talk about certain parameters of energy being literally leveraging to the point of being able to draw of energy from the universe that could be so huge it's far greater than this planet.
Could be infinite. It could be infinite. In other words, the Attel crystal, because of its matrix, I believe it was a fusion of very deeply compressed silicon carbon. Much, much, much harder than a diamond. The Attel crystal would cut through a diamond like a knife through butter. It was that powerful and that strong. But the only thing that could cut an Attel crystal was another Attel crystal. And the Atlanteans, over the thousands of years they were using it, they developed it into a magnificent science. They could literally carve any shape out of this crystal, and did. That's what the bomb was. You remember, it is a different shape. Right. And it was an unusual shape.
So we had a very unique formation of a very special crystal, and that crystal and the energy within it being misused created an energy feedback that literally destroyed it, and that was the construction of the entire continent. And if it, with that kind of feedback, that magnitude of energy, it literally, you said, take down to the...
It took every single crystal down to the molecular, monomolecular. One molecule of it was all that could exist. Sort of like what happened with the tsunami in Japan. They didn't anticipate a tsunami and an earthquake destroying their nuclear plants. Well, the Atlanteans didn't anticipate there would be a feedback from this energy.
So basically, the feedback took out the structure and everything collapsed into the ocean.
In one single day, 24 hours.
Well, we'll find out how many people... Now, it'll be difficult to prove this theory.
It is.
Simply because if it was destroyed in that way, there's not going to be much to be found. We can possibly find, in fact, I believe we will find different remnants of some of their colonies, but the smaller colonies that were farther back in the ocean.
Yes.
But of the continent itself, probably not much we found. But I think we're running out of time for today, so I want to thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Metamystic Television. Have a wonderful day.